I'm going to read just the opening of the essay to set the scene, and then I will give you some kind of contextual summary of where it goes. So it's called Songs I Can't Play. This is where you are now, my teacher said as she passed me a piece of paper. I give this to the children, she told me, to help them understand. But a better comparison for you might be the second stage of labour, when you think, I just can't go on. On the piece of paper was a picture of a boy pickaxing his way through an underground tunnel. The walls were made of rock. The boy was clearly exhausted, sweating, hunched over. He must have been digging for a long time and could not see what we see, that less than half a metre away is the open air. Only a few more heaves and he will break free. I told her that I couldn't actually remember the second stage of labour, that by that point I was too far gone. She acknowledged this as a challenge in itself, the thinking back, and told me that at the same point she decided she was just going to walk home, thank you very much, and someone pointed out to her that there was still a baby to come. For 3 months, I had been trying to play open D, then open A on the cello, but just an open D would have done. I couldn't hold the bow properly, I couldn't find the weight, my palms sweated and my thumb muscle spasmed. You're so close, my teacher said. It might be just 2 more sessions and then you'll have it. I felt myself near to tears, which seemed ridiculous. A 3-year-old could play this. If it was a matter of brute force, pickaxing my way to the sound, I might manage it. But this was a foible that my teacher had already spotted and cautioned me against. You hit a block and you just try to ram through it, she said some weeks back. We have to find a way of you not pushing and shoving against the problem. I tried again, scooting over the strings. Where was the traction, the gravity? Where is your neutral? She asked me then, and I looked at her in complete confusion. Neutral, I said. I generally don't have a neutral, or maybe my neutral is seasonal, but nor do I drive, so maybe I don't really know what you mean by neutral. She looked at me with some concern. I am wary of horses and dogs and sometimes even cats, because it always seems that they can sense something deep inside me that is not admirable, that is perhaps hard and Scrooge-like, that is too hurried, and that is therefore feeble, not soft enough, not malleable, too determined. While I play, I feel my teacher's gaze similarly. How does she deduce this corner of my character? Simply from the way I failed to bow, or more precisely, from the way I did bow. Let's try again, she said, and I repositioned the instrument. That morning, we had started the lesson with me lying on the floor, on my back, with the cello on top of me. From this position, I had played my open strings. Now she stood over me and repositioned the bow on the string when necessary. We play, she had said at one point, in the way that we live. Can you feel that now? She asked. For months, we had been trying to find the sensation of weight in my shoulder blade and arm, a weight that would let the bow rest on the string, that would let the cello carry the bow, a feeling that would circumvent my instinct to hold the bow on behalf of the cello. Yes, I said, I can feel that, my shoulder blade working against the carpet. Then I stood up and played the cello as if it were a double bass, then sat down and tried from a seated position. The feeling of weight was there for a moment and then gone. Where did it go? There was sensation and then just as suddenly no sensation. Watch for this, she said. Sometimes I seemed not to be able to feel my arm in space at all. There was a flicker of feeling, a kind of muscular fluttering, and then at a certain point in the bow stroke, something hardened and all subtle sensation disappeared. So to give some context to this, the essay emerges out of a return to cello playing after a long period of injury, when I went back and learned in the Suzuki method. Some of you may know about this, but you learn basically by ear. So I would listen to a piece for years before I would come to play it. But the thing that I found extraordinary in terms of its relationship to essaying and the writing process was that it felt to me as though it was a physicalization of essayistic thinking. And this had something to do with time and something to do with listening, in that in order to play a piece, I anticipated the sound, but I was anticipating a sound that was ahead of the sound I was actually playing. So there was a doubleness of what was actually coming out of the music, what was coming out of the instrument, and what I was expecting to play next. But that anticipation was non-teleological. Those sounds, which I try and describe in the essay, I would hear them from the side or from behind. It wasn't an expectation of reaching the end of the song, and indeed I couldn't play the piece if the expectation was arriving at an end point. My body would kind of shut down and I would fall back into old modes of practice that were related to the injury I had suffered, and I would just not be able to play anymore. So I could only play with a sense of immediacy in terms of how the sound was arriving at me sideways, without an expectation of ever really completing the song. I couldn't expect to be able to play the song, in a sense. So there was a doubleness of timing, but it was never end-directed. And in a sense, I suppose, what it did for me was make manifest an attentiveness to waywardness, which to me was the essence of essayistic practice. I was always listening for a sound. I didn't know where that sound was coming from. The sound, as it came out of the cello, I had to be attentive to the digressiveness of that piece. Although I was familiar with the rhetoric of the music and the rhetoric of the piece as a whole, in a sense that always had to be sidelined in preference to and in order to privilege an attentiveness to just the next note as it came in from one direction or another, without expecting that rhetoric to be manifest in a narrative blueprint that is familiar to us. So it was a way of ambushing my own writing practice in the end, in that I couldn't play a piece in the way that I might seek to write a novel. And if I took the practice of playing the cello in that wayward fashion and transferred that thinking to the act of writing, then I had to forego the expectation of a traditional narrative or a teleological endpoint. For me, this was connected to a kind of ongoing interest in borrowing from other forms of creative practice in order to illuminate the problems I might be having with my own writing. Whatever I'm doing in the cello that is problematic tends to be the same kind of problem in a different form in the project that I might be working on in my writing. But I'm hitting 7 minutes now, so I'm going to be cheerful and stop there.